So you heard Mr. Burns, Superintendent Burns, talk about don't start your year with rules and policies, start with something interesting and engaging. Hopefully you've done that this morning and modeled that a little bit. But we are obligated to provide you with information and district policies, so we're going to go ahead and do that. So this next, hopefully half hour, so we get back on schedule, will be information for you. And we'll share this out. I'll share this with Beth so that she can give this to you electronically. You'll have that information. So let's begin. So the district has a non-discrimination policy, and the policy applies in two areas. It applies to employees and employment, and it applies to our students. And so the link is there, and our board policies are all on our website. You're able to find those and find these policies. The trustees are determined to provide employees, interns, volunteers, job applicants a safe, positive environment in which they are assured of full and equal access to employment and opportunities, and protection from harassment, intimidation, freedom from fear of reprisal, retribution. They can assert their employment rights in accordance with the law. So we support fair employment, and that's what this message is here. That we have a statement that applies again to students and employees. This happens to be the one that applies to employees, but there's an almost identical statement that applies to students. And it states that no district employee shall be discriminated against or harassed by any coworker, supervisor, manager, or other person with whom the employee comes in contact with during the course of employment on the basis of the employee's actual perceived race, religious creed, color, national origin, ancestry, age, marital status, pregnancy, physical or mental disability, age, medical condition, genetic information, military, medical status, gender, gender identity, gender expression, sex, sexual orientation, or his or her association with any person or group with these characteristics. So that is our non-discrimination employment statement, and again, there's one that's almost identical for our students, so they have equal access and opportunity. Look at the adoption date there. When was this adopted by the board? Okay, I know it was Valentine's Day. That's coincidental. I remember the meeting that took place. It was odd to be meeting on Valentine's Day. But look how recent that is. I would say the statement has changed at least once per year over the last 5 years, with different groups being added in terms of protected status. So that gets the message that this is an organic statement, and it stays updated as state and federal law are updated. But yes, it was Valentine's Day. And you'll find, again, a statement for students as well. And here it is. So this is, again, the trustees' desire to provide a safe school environment for our students that allows equal access and opportunities. And that's to academic and education and support program services activities, and admission and access to an educational program, guidance and counseling programs, athletics, testing, and more. So there's the statement for students. And we want you to be aware of that because you are the providers of that. And you're the providers of access for students, and we need to be sure that all of our students have the same access, and that if you are doing something in a classroom, it might be a grading policy, it might be allowance for extra credit, you name it. That access has to be provided to all students, not selective, okay? And there again, here's our student statement on non-discrimination. It's really more similar than different than the employee statement, but it's about access to educational programs and services. And again, this was adopted just 1 month earlier than the other statement, and keeping it in accordance with state law. Now, let me stop there. Any questions on our non-discrimination policies for employees or students? Okay. The next thing talks about sexual harassment, and so we're obligated to make sure that you're aware of our policy, and this is Board Policy 4019.11. The Board of Trustees prohibits sexual harassment of district employees and retaliatory behavior against any employee who files a complaint of sexual harassment or cooperates in an investigation. And this complaint process is established in accordance with the administrative regulation. So board policy is policy, and administrative regulation are how policies are enacted. It applies to all district employees, volunteers, and job applicants. So complaints of harassment shall be kept confidential as much as possible. However, in the course of investigation, sometimes complete confidentiality is not always possible. Any district employee who feels that he or she has been sexually harassed or has knowledge of any incident of harassment against another employee shall immediately report the incident to her supervisor, his or her supervisor, the principal, district administrator, etc. Again, as we have a policy for employees, we also have such a policy for students, and we'll talk about that in a couple minutes. As a supervisor or principal, if he or she receives a report of sexual harassment,
the superintendent or designee will be notified. Usually that's myself as a designee in human resources. The employee may bypass her supervisor in filing a complaint if the complaint is about his or her supervisor. So if there's a concern about a site administrator, it may go to the district office. Any employee who engages or participates in harassment or aids, compels, etc., somebody else to commit sexual harassment is in violation of this policy up to and including dismissal. So there's really two parts to this. As an employee, you have a right to an environment free of sexual harassment, but you also have a responsibility that if you observe it, especially in regards to a student, that you report it. What is sexual harassment? So sexual harassment includes but not limited to unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, unwanted verbal or visual or physical contact of a sexual nature when another person of the same or opposite gender in the work environment. So right there, that's harassment. So if you look at the very first paragraph, that's an issue. And if it's brought to administrative attention, it will be looked into. There's another level, though, when it becomes conditional, when it becomes a condition for another action. So if the harassment is submission to the conduct is explicitly or implicitly made a term of employment or academic progress. So there you see both an employee kind of aspect to it, but also academic progress refers to students, right? Submission or rejection of the conduct by the harassing individuals used as a basis of employment or academic decisions affecting the individual. The conduct has a purpose of creating a negative environment, either as an employee or as a student. And submission or rejection is used as the basis for a decision affecting an employee, like a promotion or another employment decision, or student in terms of grades, what have you. So what are examples of sexual harassment? As we mentioned, unwelcome physical conduct, any physical action, massaging, grabbing, fondling, stroking, brushing the body, either purposely or incidentally. The important thing to know about sexual harassment is there's intent and impact. So there may not have been intent for the contact, but if the impact on the receiving individual was of concern, he or she may report that and will be looked into and hopefully determine that although the intent and impact may have been different, the person is on notice that their behavior was not appropriate. Unwelcome visual conduct, drawings, pictures, graffiti, so posting things in a classroom that might be offensive. Displaying sexually suggestive objects is not appropriate. And verbal conduct, such as sexual flirtations, propositions, comments about an individual's body, overly personal conversations, pressure for sexual activity, sexual jokes, stories, unwelcome sexual slurs, etc. Innuendos, derogatory comments, sexually degrading descriptions. And this last one, spreading of sexual rumors. And that has to be really a concern as both an employee certainly and also as students. You model the appropriate behavior, so we don't want to be discussing students' social behavior, relationship behavior, what have you, in an open environment. So as mentioned, there is also a student aspect to this. We've kind of referred to that already. Some of the same behaviors that are not acceptable for adults or employees are also applied towards students. So again, unwelcome physical or requests for sexual favors, sexual advances, anything that's in an educational setting on the basis of sex under any of the following conditions. So these are the same conditions again. Submission to is a condition of academic advancement, having a negative impact on the students in educational setting, and rejection by the conduct by the harassing individual creates a negative consequence for the student. So no benefits or things offered conditionally based on submission to any kind of sexual request or favor. For students, the unwelcome conduct is a little bit more detailed. There's 12 of these, but they all kind of feed into the same theme about leering, sexual flirtations, slurs, verbal comments, jokes, derogatory posters, notes, stories, drawings. So this is something to be conscious of in your teaching and in your instruction. Sexual rumors, sexual remarks, massaging, grabbing, fondling, touching an individual's body or clothes in a sexual way, impeding or blocking movements, or any physical interference with school activities, displaying sexually suggestive objects, assault, battery, electronic communications are all elements we need to be mindful of and be aware of. Now we're going to shift into the uniform complaint policy. So the first slides talked about all the protected characteristics, right, of individuals that they have for non-discrimination. Well, the complaint policy has to do with if something is occurring that is a violation of that policy, how can somebody go about making the district aware? And so that's the uniform complaint policy. And so the policy is in our board policy, and it provides an avenue for which individuals to file a complaint, and it can be filed by a teacher, a student, a parent, even a member of the community. And the complaint would be about anything that we offer as a district in terms of services, federal programs, state programs, migrant education, special education, any number of programs. Really, the entire gamut of the district services are subject to the uniform complaint policy and the non-discrimination policy. The complaint would basically state that a person's receiving a certain type of treatment or missed service based upon the fact that they are a member of one or more of the subgroups that we mentioned in the non-discrimination policy. And it also includes some other areas that have been added more recently. If somebody feels like they have been bullied, if somebody feels like they have been charged, and I say somebody, a student, is being charged for services that should be provided without cost. So students are not required to pay fees for their educational program. Any complaint that requires, or any complaint about the local control and accountability plan, that's a newer thing. And you'll hear more about the LCAP throughout the week. But if the district's not following that LCAP as it's stated, that can be the basis of a complaint. Any complaint regarding retaliation because an individual has filed a complaint, and any other complaint that's specified in district policy. So our uniform complaint policy covers a wide area, and the policy is online, and there is a form online, but it can be filed just on a piece of paper. It does not have to, does not require the use of a form. The procedures, very quickly, a person files a complaint within 6 months of the issue. The HR office is the recipient. We have to provide support for people unable to write their own complaint. Mediation is attempted first, and if mediation does not resolve it, then an investigation occurs, and then a response is provided to the complainant regarding the investigation and findings and what the resolution would be. There's a possibility of a board hearing. We have not had that. We've always been able to resolve the complaints before that level. A final written decision based upon the findings and what the district's decision is, conclusions of the law, corrective actions that are taken if necessary, and the individual has the right to file an appeal with the California Department of Education within 15 days of the district's response to the uniform complaint. Any questions on uniform complaints? Okay. So there's a subsection of uniform complaints that has to do with the Williams issue. Now, have people heard of Williams before? Okay. So this was a case that occurred that resulted in policy requiring districts to ensure their compliance with really 3 areas. So the Williams complaint falls under the uniform complaint process. So the complaint officer is still the HR office, myself. And the response time, though, is 30 days, not 60 days. And the following areas are subject to Williams complaints. Sufficiency of textbooks, that every student has a textbook provided to them that they can take with them and use during their instruction and during homework and so forth. School facilities must be clean, safe, and maintained in good repair. You're sitting in a facility that is evidence of that, and our school sites across the district are subject to Williams inspections every year, and we have an excellent maintenance department that keeps us compliant with the Williams requirements. And that there should be no teacher vacancies or misassignments, meaning that we need to fill our positions, and our positions are filled with qualified credentialed teachers. And we've been close to perfect on that, even with the environment of having challenges in hiring all our teachers that we need going forward. Did you have a question? Okay. Questions on Williams? So the Williams kind of has two avenues to it. It's part of the complaint process, but we actually have to file with the board reports on teacher assignments, sufficiency of materials, and the facilities pieces with the board on a regular basis. Okay, now we're going to move on to mandated reporting. How many people know that you're a mandated reporter? Okay, that's good. Looks like everybody's been in a position already that's required you to be aware of that, and you might have even received training. So the mandated reporter law changed 2 years ago to where we have to provide an annual training to all our employees. This is not that training, but I'm going to give you a very quick orientation to this so that you are aware between now and the time that you receive the mandated training, which will occur in one of your staff meetings back at your school site. So all of us are mandated reporters, whether we are in the district office, at the school site, whether we work in the food services, as a bus driver, we're all required to report issues of child abuse to Child Protective Services or law enforcement. So mandated reporters include teachers, instructional aides, classified employees, anybody who works for the district. It also includes anybody who volunteers on a regular basis for the district. So we have coaches, for example, that volunteer coaching an athletic team. They're required to go through this training. And it's based upon, reporting is based upon reasonable suspicion. And I'm going to have a definition of that in the next couple of slides. So I'm going to skip over this second paragraph. But the message from this is that we're all mandated reporters. So when you suspect that there's been child abuse, you might have noticed something about a student, something doesn't seem right, either physically or there's a change in the student's demeanor that makes no sense, that you are required to initially make a telephone report to either Child Protective Services or law enforcement, depending on the egregiousness of what you are hearing, and that you make that report by phone. And when you make that report, you want to make sure that you note who did you contact, the name of the agency, the address if you can get that, and the phone number, which you'll know because you've dialed it. Okay, and we have on our website all these contact pieces and information, so you're able to access it off our website in the HR webpage. After you do a phone report, you want to be sure to follow up with a written report, and that is on our website, and we'll show you how to access that. But there's a written form or a typable PDF on our website that you're able to provide as much detail as possible about the individual being potentially abused, the perpetrator if that's known, your information, school site, whatever you're able to provide that will help that agency follow up as quickly as possible with what the concern would be. And again, the reporters you may obtain copies of the forms either from the district appropriate agency, and again, there's links to that on the district website. Now, internal reporting. You are not obligated to let an administrator know if you're filing a report. We encourage you to do this, just so that if by chance you file a report during your workday and you leave the school site 3:30, 4 o'clock, and somebody shows up at the site to meet with admin at 4:35, they'll know, yes, we're aware something's been reported, how can I help you? Okay, but you're not legally required to do that. If you are able to tell us that, then we have an internal mechanism to make sure that we're all aware that a report has been filed. We also need to let you know that you need to do the report. So it's not letting an administrator know, you know, I noticed some bruising on the student, or I noticed this student was the demeanor had changed, and I'm concerned about the student, and then tell the administrator and leave for the day. You are obligated to do the report. However, we are obligated to provide assistance to you if you're not able to access the form or provide the information, maybe you need the address of the student, what have you. The office will provide that support to you. So employee notification. And a mandated reporter who reports a known or suspected instance of child abuse or neglect will not be held civilly or criminally liable for making that report. So let's say you file a report and it turns out that the issue is not an issue. Parents are not, usually parents or guardians, are not going to be able to turn back around and sue you or hold you criminally liable, even though the information turned out not to be verifiable. So when in doubt, you want to report, and you're protected by making that report. If you fail to report, on the other hand, then you can be held criminally liable and subject to fine or imprisonment. That's not common, but it has happened. And when it happens, it's unfortunate. So when in doubt, and we'll talk about reasonable suspicion, when you're not sure, that's probably a signal that you should go ahead and file the report. Also note number 3, that no employee will be subject to any sanction if you report. So if you report and it turns out not to be true, and moreover, maybe the parent became upset at the school administration because a report was filed, you're not going to be held, you're not going to have a negative impact for filing the report because it's recognized you did your legal obligation to file that report. So child abuse is a number of things. It's physical injury or death, sexual abuse, neglect, willful harming or injuring of a child, endangering the person or health of a child, including emotional abuse, and unlawful corporal punishment or injury resulting in a traumatic condition. So here's the definition of reasonable suspicion. And I think I'll preface this by saying, when an issue comes up, you're not obligated to investigate. Now, you may want to ask a couple questions. Yeah, I notice you seem kind of down today. Are you okay? I mean, that's appropriate. going much further means you probably want to report if you're unsure, let a school site counselor know if you don't think it's abuse, but there's concern for the student. But reasonable suspicion means that suspicion means that it's objectively reasonable for a person to entertain a suspicion based upon facts that could cause a reasonable person to suspect child abuse or neglect. A little bit wordy, but that's the policy, and that's what reasonable suspicion is. So if it's just a hunch, if it just doesn't seem to you quite right, you should probably make that report. Okay? It doesn't require you to dig deeper, and ask questions. Student has some bruising. I noticed you have some bruising. Are you okay? You may want to do that, but you're not obligated to. Might be a good idea. Maybe they fell. But again, they may not want to tell you what's really going on. And so that's why we want to get this thing into trained professionals' hands if there's going to be an issue. So the form is there. It's a little hard to read up on the wall, but it's on the district website. If you go to the Human Resources Department and scroll down, you'll see the form, and you'll also see contacts, and I'll see if I can show you that here in a minute. The links are available through Monterey County Social Services, and the actual form is available through them as well, but we've now made it easier on our website to access it directly. Some of these phone numbers are helpful as well. Say, well, what number do I call? Well, the numbers are here, and a copy of this is also on the district HR webpage. Okay, this next part is going to be talking about social media. So we've heard some mention of that earlier in earlier presentations, but we want to talk about you as professionals, some of you making a transition into a teaching career from another position or from college programs. And we just want to make sure that you understand that you have a presence on social media, and we want to make sure that there's nothing there that would conflict with your role and image as an educator. So I pulled this graphic from a website called In 60 Seconds. Actually, it's called Smart Insights. And it's kind of hard to read, so I put this in graph form, but it talks about what happens in 60 seconds on the web. So, and the first column is 2014, the second column is 2015, and the third column is 2016. As you expected, the number of transactions on the web has been increasing almost exponentially over the past several years. Emails sent, now 149,513 in 60 seconds. This is in the United States. YouTube hours, 500 hours uploaded per minute. Facebook posts, 3.3 million per minute. Google searches, 3.8 million per minute. Instagram photos uploaded, 65,000, almost 66,000 per minute. Tweets, 448,800 per minute. So it's just growing like crazy, right? And we all know that, right? We all have, as Mr. Burns mentioned, we all have the whole world's community on our phones. So with that in mind, some things to think about. You should maintain a separation between your personal and professional social media presence. There is a place and a time and a role for social media in education, and you'll learn more about that in technology on Tuesday morning. But you want to make sure that your Facebook and your Twitter accounts and whatever accounts are things that are for you personally and your friends, and not used to transmit, transact, or post or friend with students and parents for that matter. But with that in mind, know that access is sometimes not within our entire control. We have privacy settings that were offered, but if we misset something, a search can be done and something can be seen that you did not have intent to be seen. So don't share secrets, protect your privacy, be honest, respect copyright laws. So be careful on posting things, even on an educational basis, that may have copyright laws that don't allow duplication or posting on a website or other means. If you make a mistake, be aware of it, be honest about it. Think about consequences. Don't neglect your day job. It's just so easy to take this thing out and start, into passing period and so forth, and then suddenly class has started. And so it's probably better to just carve some time out otherwise and just focus on your day job, so to speak, versus social media. Quality matters. I'm not going to play these due to time. These are links that give some videos on appropriate conduct with teachers and educators with regard to use of social media. So once we share this out, you might click on those and just see some information there. Be transparent online. Use your real name. Disclose that you're an employee with the Salinas Union High School District, so everybody who you're communicating with or having any kind of social media interaction with, know that that is your role, and you're stating that up front. Limit interaction with students to permitted district sites. Ensure a clear distinction between personal social media and your own site, if you have a website. Having a conversation in social media, Facebook, MySpace, that's a little dated. Twitter, things of that nature, is inappropriate, at least through your personal account. If you set up some avenues within the district parameters, with regard to homework and assignments, that's appropriate. Don't share confidential information concerning Salinas Union High School District staff, students, or parents, especially on your own social media. Perception is reality, so when you identify yourself as a staff member, it reinforces perceptions about your expertise in the district so people understand what the basis of that social media interaction is. Ensure that your content that you post or interact with on social media on the district sites is consistent with your work and the district's professional standards. And remember that what you write is ultimately your responsibility. And so treat it seriously and with respect. Be careful not to post social district-related content on personal social media sites. Establish a school profile separate from your personal profile. We mentioned that already. Be careful on your personal account. Sometimes you want to just say, man, I had a terrible day, and these students were just, and you put that on your personal site, and that gets back around, and it can undermine you as an educational professional. So be careful before you vent on your own social media site. Just use the disclaimer as you do post on hopefully district appropriate sites. This is a user-created page, not treated as an official district site unless it has been established as a district site, and opinions on the site may not be endorsed by the school site. So be careful about disclaimers when you're not using district endorsed web pages. We discourage you from friending students. We also discourage you from friending parents. So you may, in the spirit of communication with parents, want to provide information to parents about how to access you outside of district parameters. It's perfectly okay to give a parent your professional email, right? Your first name dot last name at Salinas Union, salinasunhsd.org. That's appropriate. Would not provide parents your cell number, would not provide parents with your personal email account, Facebook, and so forth, because it just takes it outside of that realm. And it's protecting you as well. So again, don't engage in personal social friendships with students or parents. Friending runs the risk of exposing the student to photos or information about you that you may not want them to see. If you receive a friend request from a student or parent, you can respond somewhere along the lines of, if you're a student or parent requesting to be my friend, please do not be offended or surprised if I ignore your request. I would encourage you to contact me through my classroom page or school's official Facebook page if applicable. So give them the appropriate channels to develop a social media relationship with you. Sometimes we like to take photos. It's very easy with our phones, the students doing work in a classroom. Classroom is a place where there's an expectation of privacy. So some of you are parents, and some of you who are parents have children, and so you would want your children to have that level of privacy and know that something that is occurring in a classroom is not going to be suddenly out there for everybody to see, unless there's been prior permission given, and there's a protocol for that. So just be sensitive to sharing photos, not sharing, but posting photos of students. You should not share them outside of the school environment, and be careful not to tag students along the way. Again, it's that expectation of privacy that exists in a classroom. So we've already mentioned that. There is a district photo release form. So if you are doing something that you'd like to be able to share at a parent night or put on your classroom webpage, you can get a form that gives the parent a chance to give permission to have their student tagged or posted in as a photo in your classroom page or website. Now, there's a different case or a different standard for public events. So if it's a music performance or an athletic event or an award ceremony, that's different. And photos to show a student receiving an award or playing a piece of music or in an athletic event, the standard isn't as high, and those can be posted because that's a public event. Do have a sensitivity, though, with regard to our students with special needs, our disabled students, even in this kind of realm. We want to be sure that we're not putting things up on a website or posting that would violate the student's privacy or be derogatory towards the student. So be careful with special needs students, even in a more public setting. So again, consider the feelings of the person in the photos. some of you are parents, some of you have children, and so kind of take that mind frame when you consider posting. Refrain from tagging students in Facebook or other online photo galleries. Okay. And then the last piece on technology is with your Gmail account. Some of you are just getting that set up. So you'll be responsible for appropriate use of technology. Before using online resources, you're going to be asked to sign an acceptable use policy. So most of you have done that. Hopefully you read through it. The purposes of district technology are for education of students and professional purposes only. And it is a privilege. It can be revoked if need be. That's rare. Consider that your communications are not private, meaning if a question arises with regard to a communication, the district is able to go back and review email communications. We have plenty of work to do, and so there's nobody sitting in a monitor looking at every email that's coming through. You saw the data, right? How many thousands of emails occur. But if something needs to be looked at, there is a record that is kept, so be aware of that going forward. Technology should not be used to transmit confidential information. Sometimes you will need to have communication with a colleague, so it's not something that's accessed by everybody, but when in doubt, just have a conversation or do some other method of communication versus sending an email, which can be forwarded and replied all, and then suddenly this information is out there. So be conscious of that when using email. We do have some work or some mechanisms in the network that prevent access to inappropriate images, visual depictions that are obscene or child pornography, and that the operation of such measures is enforced, but there's always new things and new ways that things can pop up. So it's possible for a student to access something that's inappropriate, and an employee for that matter. And again, there is a record kept of access to sites, so be aware of that and just avoid sites. If you find something that a student has been able to access, send a message to the IT department, and that's another loop that they'll need to close and keep up with. And we mentioned that the superintendent or designee may monitor technological resources, email systems, and web visits. Passwords become part of the record, so you have a password that's yours and yours only. Don't share that password with anybody, but know that the passwords are available through the IT department if they need to look into any accounts. So we mentioned that you should use your Gmail account for conducting school business. We highly discourage using your personal email account, because if it's used and something has to be looked into, then that will become part of the review or investigation. So just stay to your Gmail account on professional interactions, and make sure that everything you do in your Gmail interactions are of a professional nature. Use of a personal email address with students or parents can put you at risk. So you had 9 elements on the employee acceptable use agreement. I'm not going to review all of these in detail. Just understand you're responsible for proper use, and it's safe use. Don't post anything that's inappropriate or obscene in any district technology resource. Don't promote anything that's unethical or unlawful. Really, if you have a business on the side or some other commercial purpose or involvement, your district email account should be not used to work on that. Use your own personal email to do that. Observe copyright laws. Don't read other files of other individuals. If by chance something gets left on, you get to a computer, log out, and get to your own login. We talked about copyright laws and communication. If you have any security problem, you get an email that sounds suspicious or looks suspicious with a link, notify IT. Don't open the link of an email that looks suspicious to you, because then that can infect the whole computer. Question?